we're live. It's not showing us. Hello, can you see us? And can you hear us? There's 3 people. Can you hear? Can you please add a comment if you can hear? Oh, they see us. Okay.
We can't see ourselves.
We can see ourselves. Okay. So pardon us because this is our first time doing YouTube live.
Hear the mic so people can hear?
Can you hear? I hope. So I have a special guest here. He's my husband, Dilip Barman. He's quite famous as a.
I don't know if I'm that famous.
Oh, you can't hear. Okay. Hello, can you hear now? No?
Let you close and see. We'll rejoin in a second. Oh.
Okay. I hear you now. Okay, thank you. So I have here with me my husband Dilip Barman. He's a Food for Life instructor.
We can't see each other, so I don't know if we're cut off or not.
we don't see ourselves on this screen at all. So bear with us. So I am doing this episode as a follow-up to my previous episode where I talked about my dad's journey onto whole foods plant-based diet and reversal of his hypertension. And after that, I got lots of questions. So I thought I would go live and take those questions. So I am first going to address the questions I have already gotten. In the meantime, if you have more questions, please go ahead and ask them in the chat. So the first question is, what is the difference between a vegan and a whole foods plant-based? So first of all, vegan is not just a diet, it is a lifestyle. It comes from the notion that we don't want to hurt animals, either for food or clothing, leather, the cosmetics, and any way we can minimize that exploitation of animals, even in the as entertainment, and that's the lifestyle choice. So that's vegan. Whole foods plant-based is a diet.
Mm-hmm.
And could you explain what it is?
So whole food plant-based diet is a vegan diet. So in whole food plant-based eating, we don't eat any animal products. We don't consume cow's milk or goat's milk. We don't eat eggs. We don't eat honey. We don't want to exploit animals. That's a vegan diet. And then a whole food plant-based diet goes beyond that. So certainly there's no animal products, but we try to eat food in as close a form as it comes from Mother Nature. So an example would be eating a vegan hot dog is vegan, maybe made from soy. Soy itself is whole food plant-based. It's minimally processed. So minimal processing is okay. Smushing the soybean, right? So it's still a whole food plant-based food. But the vegan hot dog is it's vegan, but it's really not whole food plant-based. That hot dog that's kind of reddish in color, it's made to imitate something that people may be familiar with. So that'd be an example of something that's vegan, but not whole food plant-based. And so generally we look for things that, I don't know if you can see my power plate. So I'm a Food for Life instructor. So we want people to eat from legumes, which are like beans and lentils, pulses, vegetables, fruits, and grains.
Right. And you avoid processed foods such as white flour, white rice, etc. And no added fat. That's important for whole foods plant-based
A healthy
diet.
whole food plant-based diet should avoid added fats.
Right, and by that you mean oil?
Yeah, if you think about it, so everybody has, there's many nutrition quote unquote experts. So there are people who are whole food plant-based but allow for higher amounts of fat. So I'm a Food for Life instructor through Physicians Committee. We suggest no more than 10% fat calories. And the reason 10% fat calories is because every single study that shows any kind of reversal of any kind, the reversal goes away beyond 10%. So there are other people besides Physicians Committee who advocate a whole food plant-based diet who allow for higher amounts of fat, but we recommend 10% fat calories.
Okay. So how would you recommend, how do people plan that? What is 10%? Like a handful of nuts every day? What
Yeah.
is?
So, and I wanted to say something more about that fat. So why no added fat? Because whatever approach you take, everybody recommends a certain amount of fat. Some people are more than 10%, maybe 12, maybe 15 different approaches. So whatever your limit is, I recommend 10%. You have a choice. And so I like to tell my students, I ask if they like chocolate. I like chocolate. So would you rather have oil or chocolate? You want to limit how much fat you have, right? And so for me, I'd rather eat a little bit of chocolate and not use oil. If you think about fats like oil or ghee, let's talk about oil, olive oil, for example. Olives have some nutrition in them, and they have fiber. But when you push them, when you press them, you leave all the fiber behind. You have pure liquid fat. And that is not something your body needs or wants. And that's why we want to leave that behind.
Right. And those Indian people who are watching this, the same thing goes with peanut oil, which is commonly used,
Any kind of
or
oil.
soybean oil, that you take peanuts, which have a lot of protein otherwise and fiber, and then you extract just the oil from it and leave out everything else. So that in itself becomes a processed food. And so you avoid oil, but you can have peanuts, right?
Yeah.
You can.
But peanuts are not one of our healthiest choices. You can.
Yeah.
Even peanut butter, if you eat it, just don't eat it that often because it's very high in fat.
Because it is high in fat. So anything that is high in fat, like nuts, avocado, coconut, you have to limit. You can have it in the whole foods plant-based regimen, but you have to limit it. And what I suggest for Indian diet, Indian cooking, is I use these to enhance the flavor as opposed to like being a main ingredient. So you can sprinkle a little bit of toasted, say sesame seed, toasted, roasted peanuts, or some nuts on the top of your salad, so you can have like a crunch out of that, and also the flavor.
Well, if you're looking for crunch, there's other ways to do it. So seeds are also high in fat, but they're pretty concentrated in flavor. You don't need a lot of seeds. And so a little bit of seeds, black sesame seed. What's black sesame seed in Hindi? Do you know?
Kala til.
Kala til. So black sesame seed, for example, is an excellent choice because it's so full of calcium. It's very nutritively dense. And that's one thing we're looking for, nutrient-dense foods. So there are people called nutritarians. You may have heard of Joel Furman, for example. So Joel Furman argues for nutrient-dense food. If you think about it, our bodies are important. Many would say they're holy, and you really want to put junk or inappropriate things in your body. You want to put things in your body that have a purpose, and you want to make sure that every bite counts essentially and is nutrient-dense. Okay.
So one question I got in Baba's case is that, are we declaring his reversal of hypertension too soon?
And I can't answer that because it really is a question that he should talk to his healthcare provider about and see. But we have seen that people who go on a whole food plant-based diet, we can't make promises, but sometimes people within a week or two start seeing some dramatic changes in their health.
Right.
And we have a lot of evidence that whole food plant-based diet is probably the best thing you can do to prevent, manage, or even reverse conditions like diabetes, colorectal cancer, and other cancers, many other
anecdotal evidence.
No, there's strong evidence.
Strong
There's scientific
evidences.
evidence, right? But then there's anecdotal evidence that sometimes it happens really quickly. So that I can't advise on your dad's situation. He needs to, of course, and he is following up with his medical care providers, a healthcare provider. But people do talk about very quickly seeing changes. Can I get back to what you asked about how do you prepare without fat?
Yeah.
So the trick with cooking without oil, because people may want to saute onions or cook vegetables. So the key thing is really having a high quality pan. And there's two ways you can go. I like something that's non-reactive, so a stainless pan. So because you really don't want to eat your pan, and if you use lower quality pans, sometimes the material chelates comes out, gets removed, and you end up eating that, which is not a good thing. You've been to demonstrations that we've had in our house about how certain pans can lose their constituent materials, right? So a good quality stainless pan is something that I highly recommend. And it takes a little relearning how to use it so you don't get sticking food. The key thing is you want medium temperature, not high temperature. And you want to go ahead and put your ingredients in. You don't have to preheat. Just go ahead and throw the ingredients in and turn your pan on and mix. And you shouldn't get sticking. If you get a little bit of sticking, you can always deglaze. You can add an acid. I like using tomato sauce or lemon juice, citrus, when you're almost done. And then you just use your spatula to rub a bit, and then the remains of the food, which you want, because it will be tasty, will often be caramelized, go back into what you're cooking. So that's a trick. The other thing you can do is instead of stainless, you can use cast iron. I do want to warn people, I know cast iron is used a lot in Indian cooking. So about 5-10 years ago, Neil Barnard, who leads Physicians Committee, reported on some tentative circumstantial evidence that too much cast iron cooking could result in problems with the brain later on, some brain degeneration. It's not clear. So the take-home message that I have, and people have to decide what to do, it's not firmly established, but what I do is I do use cast iron. I like cast iron as a surface, but I don't use it all the time. I use cast iron, what would you say, twice a week, once or twice a week, something like that. And so when you use cast iron, then what you do is, again, here you can go to a higher heat. Is if I want crispiness, like I'm sauteing something I want crispy, I'll put a little bit of oil, like a quarter teaspoon, less than that, and I turn the pan on, and quickly it spreads, and then I use a paper towel and I wipe it off. So I have a teeny, trivial amount of oil, and that's enough to give crispiness, and it adds practically nothing to what you're eating.
Right. And I have been making a lot of Indian dishes like sabudana khichdi, poha, by steaming them instead of doing a tarka. And or khichdi, for example.
Dry tarka.
Yeah, I do when I make khichdi, I mix everything. Rice, dal, water, salt, and then normally whatever things I would have put in the tadka, I put that directly in the pan, except the oil. So I put I put jeera or mori, what we call as mustard seeds, any chili pepper. I put everything in that, and then I put it in the pressure cooker. And that, if you want ginger, if you want any other spices, because that what we like is the flavor. And oil sometimes brings moisture into the mix, and if you want moisture, then that steaming helps with adding the
not
moisture.
Just that, but oil actually gives you thirst too. I remember years ago I was visiting Hawaii with a friend of mine, and I wasn't vegan, but I knew about it. And a friend who was a vegan bicyclist, he didn't own a car, he bicycled all over Honolulu, Roger, he met my friend and me before we took our overnight flight back to the mainland, and he offered to bring pizza, and it was nice. It was vegan pizza, and my friend Rich and I noticed on the plane that we weren't thirsty. Often when you eat pizza, you feel very thirsty afterwards, but his pizza, which was no oil, I don't know if it was 100% no oil, but it was no cheese anyhow, so that we didn't feel thirsty. So that's another benefit of not using the oil. Oil often does change the flavors. But to that point, sometimes if you're not used to eating this, I don't necessarily recommend going from a omnivorous diet to a whole food plant-based diet with no added fat immediately. Jumping to vegan and whole food plant-based quickly after that is a good way to go, and then start cutting back on your fat. So I had a friend in one of my classes who asked about that. He said, "You've convinced us we're 100% vegan. We're primarily whole food plant-based. We're seeing excellent results. But what should we do when we have company? Should we go ahead and cook that way?" And I thought about it and I said, it makes sense. You want to help your company to see the benefits. And if you're going to what some might view as kind of an extreme, they might say this is something that we can't do. So go ahead, when you have company, use some oil if that's what your company is used to. Saute onions in oil or whatever, but make it 100% vegan and primarily whole food plant-based. They'll probably find it really tasty. And then if they stay with you for a couple days, get rid of the oil, and then they'll have a transition there.
Yeah, and I have been running the Triangle Vegetarian Families group for more than 10 years, and I have seen people's journey towards veganism and people's journey towards whole foods, plant-based diet. And some of the main challenge for anyone who's trying to be either vegan or whole foods plant-based is that you will it that the main challenge is that they don't have their other family members in
Board.
on board with them, and that makes it very challenging. So if you're trying it, please try to talk to your partners and other family members that let's try to do it for some time, let's give it a chance, and that family then has a good chance of success. And the second challenge I often hear is cravings. Especially people tell me cheese. I cannot give up cheese. So, do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, well, I have a slightly different view on your first point.
Okay.
So it's common. If we were to always wait for our families, then we wouldn't get that far. So what we suggest in our classes, that comes up a lot. I often have a child taking a class, or a teenager or young 20s saying that I'm vegan, but I'm living at home and my parents aren't. Or a mom who says, I see the value and I'm getting benefits, but my husband doesn't, my partner doesn't, or vice versa. Maybe a husband saying that this is something I want to do, but my wife isn't aboard. What I would suggest is, if you're not the cook in the family, it might be a little bit different. But if you're cooking, then I recommend doing your thing and letting the rest of the family eat the way they want, to being an example. So if you try to force somebody, often it's not very helpful. But once they start seeing changes, that you look better, you are getting colds less, maybe you're taking less medication if you were taking medication before. So that'd be a slightly different view that I would have.
Yeah, but that is sometimes not possible in the Indian household.
Right, so that's general advice.
Not
you
just
have to.
Indian, but many households.
Yeah, so you have to make the advice your own
Right.
and figure out.
And I think in Baba's case also, I think he has more control because Babita Tai comes and he can tell her what to cook. But otherwise, he's not that demanding. If my mom was cooking, he wouldn't demand anything from her. He would just eat what she made, right? So that becomes challenging, and everyone has to navigate these.
Right, everybody's situation is different.
Everybody's situation is different. And then, can we now talk about cravings?
So cheese is the hardest. So cheese has something called casomorphins. If you think about a calf, the cow's milk is the perfect food for a calf. And you don't want the calf wandering off and not coming back to get cow's milk. Cow's milk is perfect food for a calf. And so basically, the cow is kind of drugging the baby, called a casomorphin. If your audience has heard of morphine, morphine is addictive. The brain finds it and is addicted to it. And so that's why milk has casomorphins. It's calf, come back, enjoy your milk. Don't eat just grass, but please have some milk too. And so it's addicting to us as well. Cow's milk is a very bad choice for humans. It's probably the worst thing we can introduce, worse than eating meat, believe it or not, to eat them. So cow's milk is high in fat, and there have been numerous studies, Harvard's nurses studies, for example, that have shown that when you increase your milk consumption, you increase your likelihood of obesity. The best study I would cite would be the China study, which was the first long-term study of diet. And it found, believe it or not, that as you increase your dairy consumption, you increase bone fracture. So people who are not eating dairy generally have much lower rates of bone disease. And I can talk about the science behind it if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you think about it, we don't know fully the mechanism. There's two ideas. a couple ideas of why, so I can't explain it. But if you think about the calcium in cow's milk just isn't bioavailable. Calcium is available in almost all the foods Mother Nature has provided, leafy greens and beans, in the power plate and all the foods, there's calcium available. Mm-hmm. And so we recommend eating a whole food plant-based diet, right. And that's where you'll get your calcium. You don't need to, and in fact, I would say you shouldn't consume dairy products. They're addicting. They can lead to obesity. We have an epidemic of obesity in this country and in India. Yeah. India has some issues with obesity, right? Mm-hmm. And diabetes. Mm-hmm. And so I would stay away from the dairy. Dairy is very addicting. So people who go vegan, this is the hardest thing. A lot of people say, I'm convinced I don't want to eat animals anymore. And they find it surprisingly easy to stop eating dead cows, dead pigs, dead chickens, dead sheep, whatever animals they're eating. But as you said, cheese is harder, and it's because of the addictive property. The good news is there's lots of kinds of milk available. So we make our own milk from soybeans, so you can have soy milk. You don't drink it because soy milk bothers you, so you can make almond milk very easily. You can make flax milk. We buy flax milk.
Yeah, so let's talk about that too, because how do you transition? Prior to going vegan, I was a lacto vegetarian all my life. Lacto vegetarian all my life. Sometimes I used to eat eggs.
Eggs or just cakes with eggs?
Sometimes, like if it was offered, I would have it. Although I didn't like it. I don't like the smell of it. But it wasn't something that I avoided. So giving up that little bit of milk in my coffee was really hard.
And now there's so many milks available.
But I tried those and it just doesn't taste the same. And it's not gonna taste the same. But it might still taste good, but it's not the same. So what I did was I switched to black coffee. And then I experimented for cereal, to add something on my cereal. I experimented with almond milk. And I started to make my own almond milks. And I still consider that that was transitional. Now I don't consume any milk, vegan or not. I just don't.
So our daughter and I certainly enjoy.
Yeah, you do
soy milk, or we like any kind of plant milk.
Yeah, but the thing with vegan is there's so much variety you can eat that if I can't eat soy, no problem. I know I have people who are celiac vegan, no problem at all. They can't eat any gluten and they are vegan. And no problem at all. There's so much other variety that you can always find something.
So when you became vegan, there was generally available soy milk and almond milk and rice milk, and now there's so many more choices. Yes. So I tell my students, even within say you go and you buy some almond milk, like there's one brand I don't particularly like. Some people do, and if that was the only almond milk I'd have, then I may say I don't want almond milk. But I know, because we've made it at home and we occasionally buy it, that if you don't like one brand, try another. I like hemp milk a lot, but the way it's prepared, and I think it's because of the omega-3s in it, hemp milk is a wonderful food. Hemp is a great food. To me, it tastes and smells a little fishy. And there's no fish in it, but it's because I think of the omega-3s. And so luckily, remember, we had a restaurant locally, which is closed now, which would make its own fresh hemp milk. And it was outstanding. It was creamy and tasty and didn't have any of that fish smell or taste. And so there's so many ways of making milks. The homemade soy milk tastes different from the commercial soy milk, for example.
Right. But I don't like commercial milks at all. I just make my own because I know what's in it. I can make it. And making almond milk is so easy.
Soak some almonds, put them in the blender, put some water, blend it, and put it through a cheesecloth. Put the water back in, blend it one more, put the almonds back in, more water, blend it one more time, and you're done. Right. Add vanilla if you want.
Yeah, and even easier is cashew milk because you don't even have to strain it. And you don't need a whole lot of cashews. Like a little bit of cashews can make, like a quarter cup of cashews can make 4 cups of cashew milk, or the same proportion. No, 2 cups of cashew milk, the same proportion. It's you don't need a whole lot of.
And there's recipes available, so if you are interested in doing this and you forgot, just do a quick search and you'll find how people make their own milk.
I actually have a video of me making yogurt from almond milk, and I will test. And if you look up on the internet, there are a lot of Indian vegans who have posted recipes for peanut curd. I haven't tried that personally, but people really like it, and they have tried it on people who consume dairy, and they couldn't tell the difference.
And I make my own yogurt.
Yeah.
So I always have yogurt around, and I make it. It's so easy. You can share the link if you want. It's a
Sure.
bit.ly.
All right. Yeah.
bit.ly/vegan yogurt capital Y. bit.ly/VEGAN capital Y OGURT. Vegan yogurt. bit.ly vegan yogurt.
Yeah. And another thing is, if you're transitioning, I have had a good friend of mine committed vegan, and after a while of being vegan, she was craving meat. Like she was craving. I don't even know. I've never had beef and things like that. So she was craving it, and I guess there is transitional food that you can try.
Yeah, some people, we were talking about dairy. Some people do crave pepperoni or bacon as an example.
Bacon,
so there's lots of alternatives to bacon. Maybe not in all geographies, but in the United States, there's at least 3 common vegan bacon products. There's and they're crispy as well. So I don't know if you've shared with your audience about So Many Cooks in the Kitchen.
Yeah, I have.
But we've been talking about maybe having a program where we talk about vegan bacon. It's not something that really appeals to me. I don't look for that flavor or that texture, but some people do. And there's many, many choices. Tempeh, for example, is a food that can be adapted to resemble in some ways bacon.
But that is not whole foods plant-based. People can tempeh, but a lot of the fake meat that is available is highly processed.
So as a transition, if you're used to you want cheese, there's many, many, many cheeses available that are made from tapioca, that are made from nuts. I recommend, if you have a choice and you want to pick, the nut-based cheeses are usually better. The ingredients are cleaner and more, they're less ingredients and they make more sense. There's just a few of them. Cashews make really good cheese, for example. They are high in fat, so if you eat, we always have a little bit of cheese at home, vegan cheese, obviously, but we eat it in moderation. We eat a little bit. It's not on a daily basis by any means that we have cheese. And the nice thing about vegan cheese is it's not addictive. So in terms of meat, there are transitional foods. And so if you're used to pepperoni, there's pepperoni. If you want fish, there's vegan fish. There's all sorts of transitional foods. They're far better than the meat choices, but they generally are high in sodium. And that's something people don't always pay attention to is sodium. We eat too much sodium, and we need to pay attention to the balance of sodium and potassium. And a quick rule of thumb that I might recommend that I learned recently is 1/2 is the number you're looking for. So you want the sodium to be low, you want the potassium to be high. So that ratio of sodium to potassium should be less than 1/2. So as you decrease the sodium, the numerator goes down. As you increase the potassium, your denominator goes up.
Okay, so I have a few more questions that I want to tackle. So transitioning, what I would suggest is take one meal at a time, like start with breakfast, for example, or start with lunch, or start with dinner, and do that. Try to see what you're eating now, what you can substitute, how you can change your recipes. And once you have that under control, then go to the next, and if there is something you think that you just cannot live without, for example, for me, it was a little bit of milk in my coffee, and I left it alone for a long time. I kept adding milk to my coffee, but then one day it automatically occurred to me that I don't need this anymore. So as you go on this path, your taste buds change, something changes inside you that hopefully you will lose the desire.
And that's a key point. Your taste buds do change. Give your taste buds about 14 days. So try, I actually have a slightly different approach. Leave that milk out, do it, and just steel yourself for 14 days. And then you'll find you don't have the same craving. So if you have if you've decided you want to move to this kind of pattern of eating, and Sangeeta has told you many good reasons why, it's by far the best thing based on evidence for the health and for the environment and for the animals. So if one or more of those things resonate with you, then you say, I do have that craving, but I'm going to leave it behind. Give me 2 weeks. Let me have 2 weeks. And then you'll find that your taste buds have changed. 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, that you won't have the same craving. So I might suggest that your approach would be one, but I would suggest just leaving those foods out.
Yeah. Then one other thing, one important point now, this is mid-October. So we are starting the holiday season. There's Diwali coming, Navratri started already, Diwali coming. So this actually may be a bad time
Ramadan,
to,
Eid.
right. And then we have
Kwanzaa.
Thanksgiving, Kwanzaa, we have Christmas coming up. So next,
Jewish high holidays just passed.
right. So this last quarter it may be the most challenging time to switch to whole foods plant-based diet, but this is a good time to try, and maybe you can make it as a new year's resolution, to start transition towards fully whole foods plant-based, and then try it for 6 months, and then hopefully, like majority of people, see lots of health benefits. I've had anecdotal people have told me that their migraines went away, their digestion improved, they're losing weight,
Sleeping better.
Sleeping better is important one. And also, like, some of the things like hemorrhoids, they don't hurt as much, and things like that, things life becomes easier.
Eating a high fiber diet helps you be regular, so you can use
Right.
the bathroom and not keep things inside you.
Right. So that's the thing. Now the last question I want
So in terms of holidays, I might have a slightly different approach, is look for new favorites. So if you have a favorite of some kind, find another new favorite.
Yeah, I have to say that it is going to be difficult because it's a social event.
Mhm.
After all. In India, you go to other people's house. Of course, with lockdown, that may or may not be, but people share food. It's a very fundamental aspect of the culture. So that's why I'm saying that you may want to, like, take this time to research, try out different recipes, and allow yourself to. And even like I once a year I make those vegan gulab jamuns. Right? I know that it's not whole foods plant based, but once in a while it is. It is okay.
No, so I agree with that. Occasionally, like in holidays, higher fat, occasionally, and maybe if there's certain processed foods that you really like, but I would try to find vegan versions of everything that you're looking for and make it whole food plant-based as much as possible.
Right. And the last question I want to take is, do we take any supplements?
So in the United States, the recommendation is that everybody, no matter what your diet is, once you become 50, is that you take B12. And some people might say, aha, that's an argument that maybe we shouldn't be vegan. And that's not true at all, because animals don't make B12. They're made from bacteria. And can I say something gross?
Okay.
The only reason that our friends who are eating animals are getting B12 is in the slaughter process. Some of the fecal matter comes through. That's one way that people can get B12. And it's because of the impurity of the meat.
But it's also in the animal's guts, isn't it?
In the gut, the fecal matter, they're ready to, yeah.
Right.
And so that's why they're not getting it from the animal, they're getting it from the bacteria.
Right.
In the old days, we used to get plenty of B12 because we didn't purify our food. We would drink from streams, and fish have urinated in the streams. And you need 12 micrograms of B12. You need 12 times 10 to the minus 6 grams. You need very little, but you do need it, and it's important. It's important for brain function, for your nervous system. So B12 isn't reliable in food nowadays. So whether you're eating animals or not eating animals, you should, especially once you hit 50, you should get a reliable source. And it's easy. There's sprays, there's tablets, and there are fortified foods. Cereals and a lot of plant milks do have B12. So check that it's fortified, but I highly recommend that you get B12. Some people go, I think it's quarterly, and get an injection. I don't like injections. We take the spray. And in terms of D, I will leave the D2, D3 controversy. We can talk about it some other time if you'd like. But we used to be outside much more, and many of us are desk bound, and we don't get enough sunshine. So especially in the winter, especially in the northern hemisphere, in the winter, or as you go, not just also in the southern hemisphere, as you move further from the equator, there isn't enough sunlight. And so it's not a bad idea to take vitamin D. And it's always a good idea to get checked, have your blood checked, and see what your blood looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. Like, I think what I did in case of Baba was I had him try, and it's easy that he's measuring his blood pressure every day. He has the apparatus at his home. So he was actually able to, after first couple of months, it going down, it went high again, and then we were able to look at what has changed. And then so it turns out that we were getting young coconuts for my mom, and then I suggested maybe he might want to not consume it as much, and then he was able to tweak it himself. Now he knows. I think now he knows how to tweak it.
And there's more and more dietitians and nutritionists who are trained in whole food plant-based eating. So it's always good to get professional advice.
Yeah, but he doesn't have any access to the professional advice besides you and I, of course. I mean, we have careers outside of this, and this is our passion. But I am at least just speaking from the experience, and it's not a medical advice, but I can tell my dad what to eat.
And I do teach Food for Life classes, but we never give one-on-one medical advice because we don't know what's going on inside. We always ask you to talk to your healthcare provider. And we have lots and lots of information. A lot of healthcare providers don't have up-to-date or good information on plant-based eating, and we can provide that. A great source, for example, is Michael Greger. Have you talked about Nutrition Facts? Yeah, nutritionfacts.org is a great resource. So there's lots of good information. Though we can't give one-on-one advice, we do have lots of medical and nutritional information we can give to you to pass on to your healthcare provider for them to consider.
Yeah, in my previous video in episode 21, at the end of it, I have lots of references, and also in the description, I have lots of references. And if you are a medical professional watching this, I would highly attend the conferences.
PCRM has an amazing conference every year, and this past year was virtual. So if you're in India and don't want to travel to the United States, you could have attended. I don't know what's going to happen next July or early August, if it will be virtual. Bob Leroy has an amazing conference called PPOD, Plant-Based Prevention of Disease. He's already said that next year there's 2 conferences, one in Michigan, I think, and one back here in North Carolina, and both will be live streamed. So if nothing else, and Bob does a great job of keeping the price low. He also has a scholarship, I believe. So if you don't have means and you want to hear this great information, your doctor wants to hear it, then sign up for Plant-Based Prevention of Disease. I think it's ppod.org, ppod.org. And there's many others. The Plantrition Conference, there's many of them.
And also Dr. S.L. Steen's 1-hour talk, I think, is available for free, anybody on the internet. And I have a link to that. He has a conference too.
Something stock. Plant Stock.
Plant Stock.
Plant Stock is a great celebration. And my film, can I talk about my film too?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the film was shown at Plant Stock, for example. Plant Stock is it sounds like we should attend sometimes, at least virtually, if not in person. So it's a celebration of plant-based eating, and not just the evidence-based health aspects, but the sheer pleasure of being plant-based. So my film, of course, I recommend Code Blue. I worked with Sarai Stancic. So Sarai had MS. And
what is MS?
Multiple sclerosis.
And what happens in that?
Your body deteriorates. You can't walk generally as much. You're often wheelchair bound. And she just went on a 15-mile walk or something like that, or maybe it was longer. It was longer than that, to celebrate her anniversary of beating MS through plant-based eating. So she went on a whole food plant-based diet, and her symptoms have gone away. And so our film Code Blue talks about that.
About her story, and she was diagnosed as she was in medical school, and then she reversed it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for.
Oh, you're welcome. Sure.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye.